Hello my friends, this is Eric for the Occultus Ludum, and today we'll be discussing Noita. Before I talk about the game, I must talk a little bit about its special engine, the Falling Everything.
So we have a custom engine that's called Falling Everything.
Let us go back in time and over the Baltic Sea to the magical land of Finland. As many of you know, the Finnish people, like elks, are timid and well adapted to cold temperatures. Unlike elks, however, Finns eat meat, listen to metal, and are very persistent. This determination and omnivorous eating habits allowed Finland to resist a Russian invasion and to develop Noita. Nolla Games, the developer, is a team of 3 Finns. One of them, Petri Puho, has been programming pixel simulation since the 90s.
Back in the 90s I got started in Quick Basic.
He started with a simple simulation of sand and water. Throughout the years, he made an effort to simulate other materials, solid objects, and create games with his engine. Some attempts were god games where you used the materials to shape a world, and Petri says they weren't fun. Other attempts were roguelikes, very similar to what Noita would become. But the dynamic nature of the substances interacting with each other made it very difficult to design interesting levels, because everything would just collapse. There are interesting videos where he details this process and they shall be linked. Many of these experiences were created with the help of Olli Hardiola and Arvi Teikari, both very competent creators on their own that joined in the 2010s. Eventually, the team made some adjustments and settled on the design of Noita as a quick permadeath game where you can really experiment a lot. And if for any reason you cause a situation where you explode yourself or you block your own path, that would be okay. You just generate a new world and try again. So this is a story about game design made around a program technology, the real-time pixel-level physics simulator, Falling Everything.
And you can kind of see from the trailer, we can do sand, and we can do liquids of all kinds, and then we can do gases as well. And for the last thing is like we also have like rigid bodies in there.
It is curious when you watch Nolla Games interviews how this amazing technology actually limited their design rather than give them freedom to create.
This is an early prototype I did, and the idea is that you have like this 2D building, and what I didn't realize is like if you simulate all of that, it's gonna end up as like this pile of rubble at the bottom of the screen.
Still, they have come a long way on taming their technology throughout Noita's production and polish. For example, things that are very far from the player and that are relatively stable have their computing paused. This saves processing power and protects the environment out of screen from dynamically destroying itself. To be fair, the engine is amazing and you can truly interact with every single pixel. I believe in the future, technologies like the Falling Everything will allow the production of the next generation of immersive sim games.
Oh my God, Daddy!
What a shame.
Noita is an action game in which you play as a Noita, the Finnish word for witch. As a witch, you use magical wands and alchemical potions as you go deeper and deeper into the earth, in search of mastery of your craft. The wands are highly customizable, with virtually endless combinations using different spells. Almost every rule in the game design can be broken or bent with the right spell, and your character learns perks throughout the way that can synergize with your magic. The map is procedurally generated but not entirely randomic. The world has some fixed landmarks you will encounter if you decide to explore, and even the dungeon themselves follow a certain pattern. The developers called these patterns biomes. Each area of the map has a biome, which will decide the type of soil, rock, enemies, items, and overall space distribution. You progress downwards through each of the biomes, acquiring new skills and magic, and finally beating the final boss. The developers describe this game as a roguelite. It is a game with permadeath, procedurally generated maps, and you lose everything upon death. Everything. In other games, you might unlock other characters or upgrades after you die. Not here. At least, not in the early access version I am playing. Because the game is made to be played with permadeath, the only way to avoid this crucible is by modding it. The permadeath version, the original version, is rather hard to casual gamers and 30-year-olds like myself with poor reflexes. When I first managed to beat the game, I had failed in more than 200 runs and played for about 170 hours. It speaks to the game's quality that I never gave up. Still, a normal, cautious playthrough will usually take 3 hours. There are players online, like Fury, that can finish a seeded game in 3 minutes, but surely they have sacrificed kids to the devil to achieve this skill. It's crazy. Processing-wise, the game usually runs smoothly, but there are situations that might make it really slow, such as multiple explosions or crazy ones that force the game to solve thousands of pixel actions at the same time. I like Noita's visuals, but they have no punch. Because Noita's team has more experience and better production value than other games we reviewed here, I must evaluate it against games of its own tier. Noita's presentation is a nice balance of pixel art, functionality and cuteness, but it is not impressive. Many indie pixel games manage to attract a lot of attention with their visuals. Owlboy is suburbly aesthetical and detailed. Hyperlight Drifter is conceptual, luminous and clean. Hotline Miami is intentionally ugly and dirty with a crazy palette of colors as background. Those games are intense visual experiences. Noita does not have this punch. Nothing in its art direction stands out, good or bad. The palette of colors is not drab, but it is not original either. Plants are green, the sun is yellow, the water is blue. Mostly the map is too simple to show beautiful details, but too varied to feel clean. There is a good argument Nola games could make: pixel functionality. Maybe they could not distract the player with flashy visuals because Noita is a game where every pixel is simulated. So, it might be that you, the player, will actually have to interact with one single pixel. And if that is the case, you have to be able to identify exactly what is that substance by looking at only one pixel. Let me give you an example. On the second biome, there are enemies that have lava blood. Sometimes they die off-screen, but their blood splatters all the way to you. You might be playing and suddenly you see a single pixel of lava flying in your direction. You know it is lava, because every single pixel of lava has the exact same bright orange color. As a smart player, you can react and escape from a dangerous single pixel. This comes at the cost that lava looks very bland. Look at this lava pool. In another game, it could have floating rocks melting, it could have a reddish slime effect, but in Noita this is not possible. All lava pixels must look the same to make identification easy, so you cannot play with their colors for the sake of art. The same goes for the soil. Different colors of soil represent different materials, and every material has its own resistance to explosion or acid or... Wait, when I scroll over them, they are using different pixels and colors to represent the same thing. And some substances have patterns, and I might add patterns that might make dangerous substances fairly difficult to spot, such as toxic sludge or acid in grass. So the argument that we could make to defend the bland graphics, that they are a sacrifice for easy pixel identification, is actually hard to sell. Sure, the details in Noita are not visually confusing, mostly. Even with patterns throughout the map, like the rocks and the tiles, everything is very easily recognizable. The team managed to make the stuff you interact with very clear, even if sometimes the details might cause minor confusion. And I think that pulling this off deserves praise, so congratulations Nola Game for creating pretty and functional graphics. I think the main pixel artist is RV, so congratulations RV. Oh yes, the pixel limitation does not apply to your character, enemies and solid objects. In those, you can see a bit more detail in the art. It is a funny mix of dark and cute, a tiny witch with a hidden face, cute monsters covered in blood. Nothing spectacular, but they fit well in the environment and they are distinct enough that the experienced player will always know what enemy behavior to expect right away. Still, no punch. Not a presentation that I will remember. Sound in Noita has very high quality, but it feels incomplete. The areas or stages do not have a normal music soundtrack, only musical cues, like a short song when you encounter enemies, or some ominous chords when you enter a new environment. Most of your playtime will have only ambient noises, like indistinct cavern echoes or wind that fade into the background. Many contextual sound effects as well. Drops of water, your steps, molten rock, and the peculiar muffling when you immerse yourself in a liquid. Overall, everything sounds good, fits the context, and is easy to discern. You quickly learn the sound of a shotgun being cocked or a demon dying. Audio is quite important in making spells and explosions appear powerful and dangerous. The sound of an explosion is half the fun of it. When you enter battle and songs do play out, they seem very appropriate to the alchemical overall theme of the game. They seem mystical and experimental and mostly make me really pumped. It is a shame that when they are playing, you can barely pay any attention to them as you are fighting for dear life. One thing that is fascinating is the way songs are implemented. It is very organic. Depending on how many enemies are on screen or how much damage you endure, music will have more instrument or a faster, crazier beat, and it feels natural, as if the intensity of the songs followed our own feelings. Okay, this is it. Noita's game design is wonderful, both simple and full of possibilities. I could not praise it enough. But I will try. Let us go through with it step by step. Slowly, calmly, orderly. You play as this witch and you pick up wands or potions. There are other items besides potions like magic stones, but mostly you will be dealing with wands and potions. Wands have spells in them that you activate by left-clicking, and that are aimed wherever the mouse cursor is at. Potions might be drunk, gently poured, such as when you use water on yourself to put out a fire, or you might just throw the entire flask, creating a wave of liquid wherever the glass breaks. You move about with the arrow keys and you have a little bit of levitation when you hold W. And that is really it. Really. Super simple, right? but quickly things starts to build up. Sure, your first spell is a simple damage spell, and your first potion is plain water, but soon you will be using spells that break the map, ignite wood and enemies, electrify water, teletransportation, and the effects of your potions are also varied. As varied as the poisoning effects of the Finnish drink Salmiakki Koskenkorva. Just like Salmiakki Koskenkorva, some potions are alcoholic and affect aiming. Other potions make movement hard or cause random mutations. There are many effects. Just look at the amount of different spells and potions. Just look at it. As mentioned before, the game's progression is downward and you pass through holy areas that mark the end of each stage. In these areas you get to edit your wands and choose perks, which are varied abilities for the witch, such as increased agility, vampirism, breathing underwater, and so on. As you acquire spells, edit your wands, and choose perks, you gradually shape the way you play the game. As an example, check this loadout. In this run, I bought the Permanent Shield and Freeze Field. Because Permanent Shield gives me protection against incoming shots, you notice I do not need to be so fearful of being hit with projectiles. Also, because I got Freeze Field, my Noita will hardly burn, so I can comfortably use a spell that spreads fire everywhere. In this other run, I had a spell that could cast Limitless Water and the perk to breathe underwater, so I had this idea. What if I flood the entire level in water and drown all enemies? I did learn that filling a stage with water pixels does slow down the game quite a bit on my PC, but the plan was working quite well. Until I touched a little bit of polymorphine potion and transformed into a sheep. Sheeps are quadrupedal ruminant mammals, very fluffy and used as livestock. They are also very easy to kill. Watch as I, in sheep form, desperately try to swim away from the monster surrounding me, and fail. And this brings me to another point. In Noita, you will die a lot. Like, a lot. It is hard to explain the learning curve in Noita. It is easy to control your witch. It feels a little slow to move at first, but controlling a slow character against slow enemies makes it much more viable to aim, and gives you enough time to employ tactics, change wands or drink potions. Still, many enemies have explosive attacks, fast projectile shots, and surround you in large numbers, and this makes the game fairly difficult. A group of arguably the weakest enemy in the game can stun lock and kill you in a matter of seconds in the first stage if you are not careful. On further stages, there are moments that feel like you are playing a bullet hell game, surrounded by enemies and projectiles. And the game was designed to be hard. It had to be. If it weren't, there would be no incentive for the player to experiment with magics and try to exploit the meta. When you play, there might be a moment when you think your wand is OP. At the height of your hubris, you will think that nothing can kill you, or that you are breaking the game, but then you are transformed into a fucking sheep and die. Or you use a magic that makes the ceiling fall on you, or you accidentally awake a dragon because of course this rock was an egg. What did you expect? Or you hit your head on a light and there was electricity and you fall into water. Or maybe you have a really powerful wand and you attack an enemy that actually can counter each one of your attacks, and then you actually die because your wand was too strong. God, I died so many times just from experimenting with strange spells. Or because I fell into lava. But then you, as an intellectual, might ask, well, if the game is so unfair and frustrating, why do you keep playing? I am glad you asked this question, my fair viewer. Each Noita run builds up a frenzy, a power lust. Survive, find a wand, survive, choose a good perk, survive, get more life, and suddenly Suddenly you are not surviving anymore. You are strong. Your strategy is working, and you are slowly bending the game to your will. You're breaking it. You feel that this time, in this run, you may actually get to the end. You may win. This time, you might make it all the way to the final boss. This time, they cannot stop you. That is when you get carried away and die usually, but you almost did it. You almost did it. Next time, you surely win. And that is why I adore this game. In every run, you start as a weakling and you slowly build up your strength against the risk of hordes of enemies, dangerous magics, and permadeath. The sensation is very similar to that of riding a bear into medieval battle. It is super dangerous and you will probably die because it is a bear. But can you imagine the feeling? You are like, "Oh, I have a bear, you cowards." And your bear is like, "Oh, I'm a bear." And your enemies will freak out and they're like, "Oh no, dude, it's not a bear." For 2 minutes, it would be awesome. Of course, I never actually rode a bear or went into medieval battle, but I played Noita and there I experienced battle fever and glorious sacrifice. I have, however, to point two annoying issues in the gameplay, and they will not be apparent at first, but they become very irritating after some 50 hours playing. First, you always start the game in the same stage and progress through the same areas in the same order. Other games with procedurally generated stages like Rogue Legacy and Into the Breach give you the option of choosing the order in which you tackle each of the stages. And this grants a much needed variety when you start playing for the 70th run. The second issue is that some seeds generate worlds with poor ones and perks that are difficult to use effectively. It does not make the game impossible, but forces you to be so careful that you never feel the serotonin power rush of having a super wizard. When I play, I usually check the first stage. If I do not find a decent wand and 2 hearts, I prefer to just restart the game. Granted, those are issues that affected other roguelikes, such as Spelunky, but they could have been addressed. Who knows, maybe in the first commercial version, they will fix this. There is not much writing in the game. There is a theme, a flavor, which is alchemy. There is a bit of environmental storytelling revolving around the pursuit of dangerous and forbidden knowledge, and there are these green tablets, which contain famous quotes from real alchemists and other mysterious things that do not compound very clearly. From here on, beware spoilers? Nah, not really spoilers. Kind of spoilers. The trip your Noita makes is highly symbolic. Instead of climbing a tower, which would show an approximation to the divine, you travel downwards in search of inner knowledge and dark secrets. Your journey takes you through stages that offer themselves to be interpreted as stages in this personal development into the occult. Personally, I read the levels as ambition of the material, dirtiness and mortality of the body, entrapment by convenience, chaos of nature, wisdom of science, insanity of religion, finally reaching hell itself, which would perhaps stand for that which is worse and most hidden in ourselves. Even though the game has no story, by the end Nola Games managed to squeeze in a little twist based on alchemical legends, and quite fitting with the overall theme of the game. Again, all of this is how I read the story. The developer clearly do not intend for the game to be interpreted in a single way.
Explanation or what you no that the lore is forbidden. I'm not allowed to talk about it, so secrets.
But the game has curious hidden messages in which the developers themselves seem to relinquish responsibility in offering any answers to players. instead stating the obvious irreality and futility of games. All things considered, I think the mystical presentation suits the game very nicely, but I miss having some meaningful story to think about. Without story, the game is just a crazy toy box with challenges, and a video game could be so much more. Still, no plot is better than a horrible plot, and I believe this is the safe bet that Nola Games made. I love this game. I love it. The actual content created by Nola Games could be seen in about 10 hours of an ideal playthrough, but the challenge and possibilities kept me coming back again and again. In the end, I played this little indie game longer than I played The Witcher 3 with all expansions. Noita is just that good. Besides its engine, there is nothing absolutely original in Noita. If you've played Terraria and Spelunky, you know these things have been done before. But there is something about the small size of this game and the deep complexity of its systems that makes it so much more interesting. In games like Rogue Legacy and Spelunky, even with new items, you always feel you are struggling to survive and you never acquire game-breaking powers. In Terraria, you can shape the world as you want and craft incredible equipment, but it takes dozens of hours, a long chore rather than an intense challenge. In Noita, you can become a demigod that bends reality in just 2 hours. And even though the game is designed like that, you always feel your powers are earned and that you fought valiantly for them. If you can tolerate the frustration of permadeath and failure, you will find your fun in Noita, no matter what type of games you usually enjoy. But again, I must point, Noita is a pure game, a toy with rules and goals. It does not offer characters or plots or mysteries. It is a chaotic, magical challenge for those stubborn enough to master it. And it is cute. And finish. Thank you for watching this video, guys, and thank you Nilo for answering my questions about Noita's soundtrack. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, and if you enjoy other videos in this channel, subscribe. Cheers!
Perkele, siihen et koske, saatana vie. Saatana. Sen roskapussiko meinasit viiä helakaten ruomahuoli. Huuko! Tänne näin, paikka! Huuko! Paikka! Huuko, paikka! Paikka!